Hello, welcome. I'm Andreas, your tech-curious web designer. In this tutorial, we will have a look at Django's built-in database, how to define a custom user model, how to create an admin user, and how to display data from the database on the website. But before we get started, if you like this content, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, and click the bell icon. This helps me to grow this channel and to reach more aspiring web developers. And if you want to support my work financially, you can subscribe to my Patreon page and get access to exclusive content. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you. Okay, and now without further ado, let's dive in. A big thank you to all my supporters on Patreon, buymeacoffee.com and on YouTube. And a special shout out to my newest supporter, DG. Thank you so much for your support. In Django, there are three main ways to create a user table in the database. The first option is to use the default user model. This is the simplest option if you only want a simple user login. Django provides a built-in user model that includes fields like username, password, and email. However, you cannot easily add custom fields like an avatar or the bio directly to it. To work around this, you can create an additional model, for example a user profile table, with your custom fields and link it to the default user model using a one-to-one relationship. You can also use Django signals to automatically create this related profile when a new user signs up. The second option is extending the user model with the abstract user class. This approach is more flexible. Important here is that before you run any migrations, you must create a custom user model that inherits from the abstract user. This allows you to keep the default fields like username, email, and password while adding your own custom fields, for example bio or avatar image, directly into the model. Once you define this model, you must tell Django about it in the settings.py file and then run your initial migration. The third option is to create a fully custom user with abstract base user. This is the most advanced option. You build your user model from scratch by inheriting from the abstract base user class. This gives you complete control but also requires you to implement essential features yourself, like authentication or user management. In this tutorial, we will use option 2 and create our user model with the abstract user class. Okay, let's start by creating a new app for everything to do with users. With Python manage.py start app a_users. So this created now my users folder here in the project. Then let's create our custom user model now. I go to the models.py file. Import here the abstract user class from django.contrib.auth.models. And here I define now my custom user class. A class is a blueprint for creating an object, and it contains properties like attributes as well as functions, which are called methods when defined inside a class. Here I'm defining a class, and more specifically a model class, that tells Django how to create a corresponding table in the database. And this custom user class is inheriting the properties from the abstract user class, which is Django's default user model. So what we inherit from the abstract user is the username, the password, the email, the first name, and the last name, among others. Additionally, I will add now the new properties. First we have the name. Instead of first and last name, I just want to have one field for the name. We specify what field it is. Here we're using a character field with a max length of 30 characters. Null equals true means that the field in the database can be empty, and blank equals true means that users are not required to fill in this field and can be left blank. Then we define here an image to store the avatar image. We're using here the image field, but for these fields to work properly, we need to install an image processing library called Below. Because, as we have seen already with the static and media files, Django leaves it up to us to handle anything to do with images. And to install this package, we write pip install below. With upload to, we define where these images will be saved, and this will be in the avatars folder, and this avatars folder will be placed inside the media folder. All user uploads will be stored in the media folder, as defined in the settings.py file. And when null is true and blank is true, we make this field again not required. Then we have the bio property using a text field, which is similar to the char field, but without character limit. And lastly, we have the birthday, using a date field to store a date. And to give this object a name in the admin panel, I add the DunderString method. In this case, I return the username. The self keyword refers to the instance of this class, so we can access the properties inside a method. Okay, we can save this file. Next, we need to add this app to the installed apps. So I'm going to the core folder, to settings.py, here to the installed apps, and add the users app to the My Apps list. Finally, for this custom user model to work, we need to tell Django to use this model instead of the default user. And we do this in this settings.py file. So at the very bottom here, I set here the auth user model variable to our custom user class we defined in the users app. Okay, let's save this file, and only now we can do the migration to the database. And we do this with two commands. First, we have the make migrations command to create a migration file. With Python manage.py make migrations. This created now our first migration file. We can see it here in the migrations folder. In this file, we have the instructions for how Django should create the corresponding table in the database. Normally, creating tables requires SQL, the programming language used for relational databases, but Django handles that for us. All we need to do is to define the model class, and Django translates it into SQL to create the table. This feature is called ORM, Object Relational Mapping, and is one of Django's most powerful tools. And here, for example, we have the custom user model with all the properties, including the inherited ones from the default user and also the custom properties we just added. And then to migrate to the database, we use the migrate command. With Python manage.py migrate. And with this, we have created our custom user table in the database. The next step is to create an admin user to have access to the admin panel to see the contents of the database. And we create this admin user with Python manage.py create superuser. Here we add a username, an email address, and a password. Alright, the superuser is created now, and we can log into the admin panel. So I start up the server with Python manage.py run server. And the URL to the admin panel is defined here in the URLs patterns. So by going to /admin, we can access the Django admin panel. However, in production it is recommended to change this very obvious URL path to something less predictable in order to improve security for the database. Okay, let's go to the admin panel with /admin. Add here the login details for the admin and login. Alright, and this is the admin panel. At the moment, we only see the groups table here. This table is automatically created by Django and manages user roles and permissions. So you can, for example, assign multiple users to a group and define the permissions for this group. But what we can notice is that the custom user model we've created is not here. And this is because we still have to register it with the admin panel. Let's do that now. So we're going to our user folder and here to admin.py. And this is the place where we register our models with the admin panel. So let's first import the custom user class we defined in the models.py file. And we import it with from.models. Here the dot means the current folder. And it is importing the custom user class we defined here. We can also get rid of the comments now for the inherited properties. Okay. So this will import just the custom user class. But if you want to import the whole file, you can use the asterisk. So this would import all the code now from the models.py file. However, it is recommended to import specific classes by their name to avoid name conflicts and clutter. And then we register this custom user class with admin.site.register. Okay, save this file and let's check it out. And now also a section for our users app appeared and inside our users model. And our first user is the admin user, displayed here with the username, as we have defined on the model class. And here we see all the fields which represents the properties of the custom user class. First we have the properties we inherit from the default user, like password, last login, username or email address. And at the bottom we find the properties we added ourselves, the name, image, bio and the birthday. Let's rearrange the fields on this page a bit differently and start with our custom fields first. Instead of using the basic register method, we can modify the fields on a page by defining an admin class. And I name this class custom user admin. And with this decorator, we register it with the admin panel. The line with the at above a class is called a decorator. It wraps the class with another class, which can extend its behavior. In this case, we register the custom user class as well as the custom user admin we will define now. This class inherits from the user admin, which is a predefined admin class to manage specifically the user model. Let's import this model. From django.contrib.auth.admin import user admin. And then here I define the field sets. These are different sections on a page which can also have titles. First I will display our custom fields. We will add this as a tuple. A tuple is like a list, but it's faster and the content can't be changed and is represented with round brackets. And then we add the user admin field sets. We get here a wiggly line because our editor, in this case Visual Studio Code, is not sure what type the user admin field sets are because they're dynamically created. And in order to combine two values using the plus symbol, they need to be the same type. So it gives us this warning. However, we can ignore this warning, or we can also add the comment type ignore. Now this red line is gone. And now we add a custom field set. So in the square brackets here, I define first the title of the section, or none for no title. And then in curly brackets, we define the fields. And here we add the fields we want to list. So here we have the name field, image field, bio and the birthday. Okay, let's save this file. Let's check it out. Okay, and as we can see here, our custom fields are now at the very top. So the name, image, bio and birthday. And then we have the field sets of the default user with the titles. Nice. Let's add some data now. So add here the name, upload an avatar image, add a bio, and a birthday. Okay, and then click Save. And now on the dashboard we can see we have 5 columns. These are coming from the user admin class we inherit from. The username, email address, first and last name, and the staff status. But we can also define other columns. For example, let's display the name instead. With a list display variable. So here again in a tuple, I add the columns I would like to display. So the username, name, email, and is staff, which shows if this user has access to the admin interface. Okay, save this file. And as we can see here, now we have username, name, email, and this stuff. Awesome.
Yes! That's awesome!
And the avatar image we uploaded got stored in the avatars folder inside the media folder here. Nice. Okay, next let's create another model, the model for a post. So I'm going to my post folder, here the models.py. I define here the post class. This time we inherit from the models.model class. This is the default class to create tables in the database. And first we have here the author property, and we connect this property to the user model using a foreign key relationship. This means each post is linked to a specific user, the author of the post. This type of relationship is called many-to-one, because many posts can be associated with one user. And we can import this user class with from django.contrib.auth.models import user. However, this user is the default user and not the custom user we have created. So to connect to the custom user, we need to point to the auth user model variable we defined in the settings.py file. So let's import settings. So instead of the user import here, I import settings from django.conf. Okay, with this we point now to the correct user model. And the onDelete parameter defines what should happen to this post object when the author is deleted. And cascade means that when the author is deleted, also this post will be deleted. However, if you want to keep the post, we use here set_null. This will set the value for the author to null, so not existent. And then we also have to add null equals true and blank equals true. And another parameter we can add to this foreign key is related name and set this to posts. This defines the reverse relationship to the author, meaning we can fetch all the posts that belong to a specific user using user.posts.all. If we don't define a related name, Django uses the default, which is the model name and _set. So it would be, for example, user.post_set.all instead. So this related name makes the code just friendlier and more readable. Then also here we have the image. Again, we're using here the image field, and we upload it to a post folder inside the media folder. Then we have a body using the char field with a max length of 80 characters. And again, make this field not required, with null is true and blank is true. I add the text property, again as a char field. And the last property I add here is created@. So this is the time when this post was created. And I'm using here a date time field and set it to auto now at. So this field is automatically filled in with the date and time when this post is created. And to represent this object in the admin panel, I'm using the ID. So each object by default will have an ID as well. We don't have to add it manually. So with self.id, we take this ID and convert it to a string. But as we can see, we have again the wiggly line, because our editor does not find the ID in the class. However, it will be added dynamically by Django when this model is created. Here again, we can use type ignore to get rid of it. Alright, and with this we defined our post class. Let's save this file and let's do the migrations. So first I shut down the server with Ctrl+C. Then I create a migrations file with python manage.py make migrations. This created the migrations file. And as we can see, it contains also the ID property now. And then I run python manage.py migrate. And then start up the server with python manage.py run server. Next, let's register this model in the admin.py file. Import here the post class. And register the post. Okay, save this file and let's check it out. And as we can see, we have here the post section and the post table. So Django by default uses the plural name of the class name, so the post class becomes posts in the admin panel. Alright, let's create our first post now. I click here on Add Post. Here we have the foreign key relationship. So I choose here the author. I upload an image. Add a body. And a tag. Okay, then save this post. And as we can see, it is represented here with the ID. Now, when displaying a post to users, showing the ID is not ideal because it's sequential and predictable and could allow users access to otherwise hidden content. A better option is to use UUID, a universally unique identifier, which is a 36-character string. UUIDs are designed to be unique across all systems, making them nearly impossible to guess and much safer to expose in URLs. So in the models.py file, I import the UUID library and add here this UUID property. Here we're using the UUID field, which automatically validates the input. The default parameter generates a random version 4 UUID string. Editable equals false prevents the field from being edited in the admin panel. And unique equals true ensures that it is unique in the database. And let's use this UUID to represent this post now. So instead of the ID here, I use UUID. And we can get rid now of the type ignore comment. Okay, save this file. And because we've modified a model here, we need to apply this change to the database as well. As we can see in the terminal here, it gives us this error that this UUID column in the database doesn't exist. So let's make the migrations. First, shut down the server, then Python manage.py make migrations. But here we get a warning telling us that we have already objects in a database where this UUID property is missing. We got here two options. Option 1 is to manually assign a unique UUID value to the existing database objects. Or option 2 is to quit this migration process and edit the field. I will do that. In many cases, we can simply set null equals true on the field to allow it to have no value. However, in our case, we want each post to have a UUID. So we can temporarily remove the unique equals true parameter and let Django generate a random UUID for each object. So I choose here option 2 and remove temporarily the unique equals true parameter. Save this file and run the command again. And this time it worked. And run Python manage.py migrate. And then start up the server again. And here it created now a UUID for this object. Nice. And now that the model has this property, we can add back the unique equals true parameter. Again, shut down the server, make migrations, migrate, and run the server again. Alright. Also here, if we wish, we can display more information for this object and add some columns. So I'm going to the admin.py file. And instead of the basic registration, I create a post admin class, add the decorator, and add again the list display to display the UUID, the author, and the body. Okay, save this file and let's check it out. And now we display the values for those three properties. Great. Now that we have post and author data in the database, we can display it on the home page. So in my post folder, I go to the views.py file, to the home view function here. And to get all the posts from the database, I access the post model. For this, we have to import the post class. So from .models import post, then .objects. This is called the model manager. It gives us many methods to interact with the database. For example, the .all method, which fetches all the objects from the post table. Then I add this post variable to the context. And now I have access to this post object in the template. Okay, save this file. Now we go to our home template. So in the templates folder here, into partials, we have _home.html. So here we have the article element we display on the home page. And here we create now a loop, which loops through all the objects from the query set we receive from the backend. And the syntax for this loop is for post, this is the name we can give to each object in the list, in posts. And posts is the object we get from the backend. And we close this loop with n4. And we add now the data with double curly brackets and dot notation. For example, to get the image of this post, we write post.image and add .url. This URL is generating the whole path for this image. Then here we have the author's username. We can write post.author. This gives me already the username because we defined it in the string representation, or we can add .username to be more specific. And the tags we can display with post.tags. Now a post can also have no author, so in that case we can hide this whole element and we can check this with a condition. So if the post has an author, we display the author's username and close it with endif. And the same we can do with the tags. So if this post has tags, I show the tags and close it with endif. And further down we also display the avatar image of the author with post.author.image.url. And again I add a condition to display this information only when we have an author. So if this post has an author, I display the button and close it with endif. Alright, save this file and let's check it out. And now we display the post we have created in the database. Nice!
Nice.
Alright, and this is all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. In the next video, we will look at the upload page, where users can upload an image and create a post. If you like this content, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel and click the bell icon not to miss the next one. I hope to see you there. Until then, happy coding my friends, and bye bye for now.